Welcome to the OpenHearted Podcast. Nothing's even playing.
It is.
You'll need to give me a heads up once that comes in, man.
Good.
Hello and welcome to the OpenHearted Podcast. My name's Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Photon John. What's going on, brother?
I just got back from Toowoomba. Had a little speaking engagement up there. This was a fun little
Nice. I just want to apologize for everyone. We're running a bit late. We've got some technical difficulties. My computer has shit itself right when we're about to start. So I'm rather frustrated right now because when you're someone who is organized like me, not having things working and working from your phone. So I'm actually doing this podcast from my phone at the moment. All right. So hopefully it goes all right. And not even my light is working now. So it's all working well today. So fun times. There we go. All right. So what we might do, let's get our guest up onto the podcast for today.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just get this happening. Add to stream, invite guest. No. What the hell's it doing? Here we go. Vanessa, how are you?
Kia ora, I'm very good, thank you. Very happy to be here with you guys, but feel for your technical problems. They're just the worst when stuff like that happens.
Oh, it is.
Always at the worst possible time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was seriously just about to cancel the whole thing because I was just like, this is just ridiculous. But we ended up getting there. Okay, so that is the main thing. So I apologize if I sound a little bit, I don't know, all over the place because I am at the moment, but we are here. So before we do anything, I might just do a quick shout out to all of our listeners. So if you are listening through, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media platforms. You can see us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, and if you want to as well, please go to our openheartedsociety.com website where you can check out all the good stuff we're doing. So also too, if anyone has any questions for us today, please let us know. All right, because we'd love to hear from you. Kev, hey Kev, can you control the comments or anything like that on your side of things, mate?
I can see them. Hopefully I can pull them up.
Yeah, if you can, that'd be good. Yeah, because cool. Like I said, I am running off a phone here today. Now, I don't even have anything in front of me here at the moment. So I'm pretty sure we're covering parenting as a neurodivergent person. Am I correct?
Yes. You are.
Nice, fantastic. So Vanessa, this is probably the first time we've been able to have a proper chat without everything going all crazy and everything like that. So you know what? Please share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, all of that stuff.
Sure, cool. Well, first off, I'd just like to say, I thought this podcast was last week. So, as someone who's dyslexic themselves, I'm actually quite pleased that I'm here and I've got my questions.
Good job.
Kia ora, everybody. I'm Vanessa Victor. I run a business called Remarkable Minds. Currently, I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand. I have lived in a few different countries in the world. Actually, I've lived in Scotland and Norway and the Middle East. So been around a little bit. I'm a late diagnosed neurodiverse individual. So I didn't find out about my dyslexia and ADD until I was in my 40s. by that time I'd already had my 2 children, and was struggling with lots of things in life, and being a parent, certainly. So that's a little bit about me. And then I thought I'd also let you know that I love Lego. So there you go. That's my other little
great.
Lego.
What have you got? You've got the combi van there, is it?
I have.
Yeah, nice.
I've got another one over here as well, but I won't show you that.
If you have a look, if I can turn my camera here a bit, I can't. So up there, I've got like the McLaren Formula One car, and I've also got like some motorbike there as well. So I'm a bit of a Lego fan myself. McLaren is probably quite a big brand over in NZ, considering Bruce McLaren was a Kiwi as well. So not that I'm a Kiwi, but representing the brand, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Nice. So, you were talking a little bit about, you were diagnosed quite late, all of that type of stuff, and, with your dyslexia and all that. So, I think it'd be good for our listeners to really, tell us a bit about your experience, especially in regards to the work you do in regards to neurodiversity as well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. So I did actually prepare some answers because, with my ADD, I do tend to go off on a little track sometimes. So I've kind of got them there to try and...
Which actually isn't a bad thing when you're on a podcast.
Especially with us.
Yeah.
Cool. So, obviously I've got quite a lot of lived experience of neurodiversity. And it was interesting because just thinking about getting ready for this podcast and talking about being a parent, I also was thinking, actually, my parents are both neurodiverse. So because as we know, it's hereditary, but, my mum has never been diagnosed with ADD, but she absolutely is. So that kind of experience, a lot of it is lived experience. So, I can see now patterns in my parents and the way they parent. And then obviously me being undiagnosed for so long and just not realizing what was going on. So I've kind of got all of that lived experience. And then when I returned to New Zealand, I was looking for a new career. I didn't want to head back into the HR corporate world. So I actually trained to become a licensed Davis dyslexia, attention mastery and autism facilitator. So I've done about 5 years of training in the Davis methods and started Remarkable Minds back in 2016. So, 6 years ago. And is it 6 years ago? Is it? That's 7.
You're asking the wrong person.
However long ago that is, right?
Totally.
And that's really evolved, I guess, because I just am so passionate about trying to help people that were as lost as I was. And I would say I was very lost and I was very stressed. And understanding my own neurodiversity, then plus learning all the training that I've had, I really just wanted to help people. That's kind of at the heart of what I do. But I have written our purpose, so I can tell you what our purpose is, if you like.
Yes.
Our Remarkable Minds purpose is to change the lives of neurodiverse people so that they feel confident, capable, and supported, enabling them to thrive in work and in life. And that's kind of been my journey over the last few years. So cool. We could probably do another whole podcast about being a neurodiverse entrepreneur as well.
There you go. Well, we actually did one with someone with that one, a few months ago now, and it really received some good feedback on it. But, I think a really cool thing with the topic we're going over today was, especially when Kev and I were getting the questions together, Kev's mum was actually there with us and sort of helped us with a lot of the questions, because, you know, she's definitely has lived that lifestyle and I suppose the challenges that she has faced. Wouldn't you say, Kev?
Yeah, I would say so, especially as a very young parent who was neurodiverse and undiagnosed. She faced quite a few struggles growing up, had to figure a lot of stuff out. Yeah. If I could just backtrack a little, you mentioned the Davis method. Could you just fill maybe some viewers in on what that is, including myself?
Sure.
just a brief outline. It's fine.
Yeah. No worries. The Davis methods is it's quite a holistic but practical experiential learning programs. They were created by Ron Davis back in 1982, I think it was. So he was a man who was dyslexic and autistic himself. And he created a program, one to help him learn to read, and then one to help him be able to participate in life, really, because he knew that he wasn't the same as everybody else, and everybody else seemed to be able to understand life's lessons and structure, and he didn't. So he's created methods that are now taught worldwide. We have facilitators all over the world, and those facilitators do a variety of programs. So we work with, we do a dyslexia program, an ADHD program, and then an autism program as well. So he's a very beautiful man that just wants to enable people to live their best life, really. And does that sound enough?
Yeah, that's good.
No, all good. So, you know, let's get stuck into this. So, sorry, I missed the first question. Sorry. So, as a neurodivergent parent, what are some of the struggles you might face? What have you found have been some of the problems that you've come up against and all that type of stuff?
Sure. So, I was reflecting on this question and thinking, because, you know, my boys are now 19 and 22. So they're kind of have got a little bit older. So I was reflecting on how our life used to be. And I would say, I think, as I said earlier, I was just so stressed all the time because I didn't seem to have the same skills that other parents did naturally. So I always talked about, it was like everybody else had the parenting manual and I'd kind of got one where like pages were ripped out because I just never seemed to have the same skill set that others did. And obviously now I know why, but then I didn't. So, you know, being on time, being organized, you know, I remember one time I dressed my son up as an astronaut and drove into school and then realized it wasn't dress up day. So I was like, lie down. And we kind of like drove out of the car park again.
That's funny.
Well, it's funny now, but at the time I was just like, oh, how can I be so useless? You know, I'm such a bad mum. You know, I'm so, I was so hard on myself because I used to get all of this simple stuff wrong. So it kind of left me, it caused a lot of stress and tension, really. And so that was definitely one side of it.
The self-critical kind of.
Sorry, go on.
The self-critical sort of language. Yeah.
Hugely. Because you know, being neurodiverse, it kind of makes you, sometimes you're not very good at those life skills, are you? And you know, they're the things that other people seem to do so easily. So there was definitely that side of it. And I think the other thing is that, you know, before I realized my son was dyslexic, he just was struggling so much to read and write. And my dyslexia comes out more in my maths. So I could actually read okay, but what I realized is I've created my own way of reading. So I couldn't help him. So the teachers would say, you just need to read more. And I would just be like, if we read any more at home, you know, seriously, reading wasn't joyful. It was tears. It was fights. It was frustration.
Was this for you, like frustration for you or for your son?
Both.
Yeah. See, like the thing is, right, like I often see people post up stuff, right, and they're like, oh, you know, I really just want my son to enjoy, or I really want my kids just to enjoy reading. And it's like, okay, well, you can teach people to read and all that, but if someone isn't going to enjoy reading, they're never going to. Do you know what I mean? Like I can read now pretty well, but I don't enjoy it. I never will. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, it's just like if I say, hey, do you like watching the rugby, for example?
Yep.
Oh, you do? Okay. What's something you don't like following there?
Okay, so UFC. My son watches UFC.
Okay,
I really
great.
don't like watching UFC.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
There you go.
If I was to say to you, you know, just keep watching the UFC, and you'll like it eventually, it's never going to happen. And I think this is where people don't realize, especially when we're trying to get kids to read more and more so they can like it, they're never going to like it if they don't like it. It's just simple as that. Same with adults, you know what I mean? Same thing.
And I think I saw a little bit of it with teachers and other parents towards my mum, where they were just like, but just do this. And they just couldn't comprehend that she just didn't have the skills to do certain things. Which is not to talk down about her parenting capabilities at all. She was an absolute legend, but you know, she had to navigate her own path through that while everyone else was telling her, but just do it this way. Why can't you just do it this way? Which is, I'm sure it's a very common theme on this podcast.
Yeah, that's so true. And you know, I think that is another struggle is that I see a lot of parents facing is it's actually kind of quite triggering for parents. You know, like they might have struggled in school, but have then kind of got through it and gone on, and then their child is struggling. And that can be really hard for a neurodiverse parent as well, is seeing their child struggle like they used to.
Yeah.
You know, and that can be really hard as well. So, you know, it's not an easy journey.
And I think probably what would be, you know, especially when I look back to when I was at school with, you know, especially my mom and all of that, you know, sometimes you're getting told, hey, do this and that, and you're getting told by people who don't fit the person you are. So what I mean by that, they're not neurodistinct. You know what I mean? So how would they know what it is that person needs? And that's the hard part. And I think especially when I was at school, it was like, okay, you know, your son's never going to be this, your son's never going to be that, you know, so there was lots of, I suppose, self-doubt as you get older, because you're like, well, I've been told all this from a young age. And then you get a lot of depression and all that type of stuff starting to kick in and all that type of stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And can I just ask, Vanessa, are your children neurotypical, neurodiverse? Did they have some of the same struggles, or was it a case of having to learn to communicate with them as neurotypical kids?
Yeah. Thankfully, they're not neurotypical.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
So I have one son who's quite severely dyslexic, and one son who's ADD. So they're both very neurodiverse.
Does that create a bit of family kinship at all?
Once I understood more about being dyslexic and ADD, and once I started my training, yes.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, no. It was very I was really caught between trying to be the mum who was the like structured, organized, I can teach you how to read and I can teach you how to do maths person, and that neurodiverse person that I am, which is just like, don't worry about homework. Let's go and build a cave full of boxes and, play Lego and, all that type of stuff. But once I understood more, and it's given me a real bond with them, I think that I'm very lucky to have.
Yeah. Great.
And you know what, right? And I think this flows really well into our next question. So when you were diagnosed, did that make parenting easier in any way? Like you sort of started to go, now I can see why this happened, or you're able to sort of, especially with your sons. You said you have 2 sons, right? Yeah. So with your sons, you were able to go, now I can see what's happening here. You're able to provide them with better support type of thing, or understanding, or whatever that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely massively changed our home life, I would say. And I think I could relate to them on a level that their father couldn't. So their father is very neurotypical. So for him, he was just like, I just don't understand why, I don't know, they're not organized or they're not on time. Whereas I'm like, I completely get why they're not organized and on time, And I think the biggest thing is it took that stress out of the interactions, because I think as parents, especially, dyslexia has it's a superpower, and, kids are being told this on the one hand, but on the other hand, they are feeling incredibly overwhelmed, lost, and they know that they can't do what all the other kids can do. So it's not feeling like a superpower. Then you go home and you've got your mum going, it's really good you're dyslexic because, you're really creative. But behind that, you're really stressed because they're doing so badly. So
and the schools can tend to freak out a bit when they go, we've got a neurodiverse child. And I feel like that attitude can rub off on the children, where they're like, okay, you've got all of these difficulties and we're going to have to work really hard to make sure you can just be as good as everyone else. And the whole narrative that they frame it around for the kids is really unhelpful, I think.
And so frustrating, and it really is. It's like, you've got learning difficulties. It's like, we're going to have to take you out and do something special for you,
Well, do you know what, right? And this is something I remember, on Facebook not long ago, someone was, what were they saying? They posted up something about special education type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, what was it called? Special ed, I think it was called back in school. And it's like, you got to go to the special ed class or something like that. I hated, when, for one, it being called that.
Yeah.
And, especially when it's like, hey, Will, you've got to go to special ed now. It was like almost putting a sign on my back. And I remember someone posted something up about special education or something, and I said that exact words, and these people just these parents annihilated me online. And it's like, what would you know? How would you know how I felt when I went to those types of things? That was really hard going for that type of stuff,
Yeah, I knew some of the the coolest, toughest kids in school who had to go into that class with me for maths in particular, and I'm just destroying the stereotype about autistic people being super intelligent, by the way. But I watched these kids who were super confident with ladies and with the teachers, and they were the popular kids in school, and I watched them get broken down and become really self-conscious and get picked on by their friends about it, and it was not a positive experience at all. And I understand that they were trying to help. But I don't think a single class for everyone who struggles with maths is definitely the way to go, because if you're not giving personalized learning, because that's a whole bunch of kids who might have a whole bunch of different reasons that they're not doing well.
The problem I faced was you were struggling in school because it was taught in a way that didn't really work into how I did things. Yeah. And then you go into special education and it was pretty much taught in the exact same way, just with less people. So I was still failing it. So, you know, your confidence levels start going down even lower because you're failing special ed as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think being able to understand why my boys were, you know, not doing so well at this or that, or reading or time management or whatever, you know, they both got very different strengths and skills. They're both very different. But I think for me, you know, what made parenting easier is understanding what was actually going on for them, and that awareness. And I always think, like I said at the beginning, it's all very well to say it as a parent, but I tell you what, kids don't pick up what you say. They pick up how you're feeling, you know, what you're doing. That's what they remember. They really don't remember what you say. So, you know, now we kind of joke about it. My son's looking for a car. And so I was kind of looking on an app that we've got here. So of course I was flicking through it, just looking at the pictures going, oh, I like that one. I like that one. And the boy's dad said, oh, well, did you read the details? I was like, of course I didn't read the details. I just scan read it, you know, like I'm like, I like that one. So that's the difference, is that it's like, okay, I accept these are your strengths and these are my weaknesses, and I'm actually okay with that. And I always remember my you know, honestly, my dyslexic son has taught me so much in this life. I'm so blessed to have him. I remember he was about to start high school, and I was just starting my training. And I remember he was lying on the couch behind me, and I was trying to talk to him. And like 14-year-old boys, I've learned that you're better to not look at them directly and sit down and talk to them. So I was kind of like typing on a computer. And I said to him, you know, have you kind of thought about how it's going to be at high school? And he was like, yeah. And I went, so maybe we could do some more, you know, work on your writing and you know, like, let's just, you know, just so you kind of feel okay. And he went, I feel okay. And I'm like, well, okay. And so I thought, I'm going to stop being like nice mum now. I'm going to like really tell him how it is. And I'm like, well, how are you going to feel, you know, when you're in this class of all these kids, and, you know, and your writing really isn't that good. You know, it might be the worst writing in the class. You know, how's that going to feel? I will never forget it. He was lying there with his hands behind his head like this. And he went, the thing is, Mum, it's not going to bother me. It's only bothering you.
Yeah, good response. Good response.
And I just thought, there is dyslexic intelligence or neurodiverse intelligence. Do you know what I mean? Like the empathy and the ability to view it from that perspective and to say that just blew me away. And I actually said, do you know what? You're exactly right. I'm more embarrassed about it than you are. So as long as you're okay, all good.
Yeah, but you know, it's good that he seems to have seem to have at that age had such a good sense of self and understanding that, you know, he was having difficulties, but it wasn't his fault or anything like that. So, but that's unfortunately not always super common. But that's great.
Exactly. And I guess that's kind of was my point, is because, you know, we found out he was dyslexic when he was 8. So this is like 7 years on. So how did it change my relationship? Once I was diagnosed, I could understand, you know, being neurodiverse, and it meant I could really see him, not just his diagnosis or what he was struggling with. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. I got more affected. You know, you were sort of saying before how people, they don't necessarily remember what you said, they remember what you did or whatever. For me, it was vibes. I remember clearly that certain teacher was very condescending, and this certain teacher was very understanding, and so
it's interesting like that, and like especially from school, you can sort of pick up on a lot of. I don't know. I sort of look back to a lot of my experiences with certain teachers, and I just think I now feel sorry for some of those teachers who I suppose had a real chip on their shoulder. Do you know what I mean? To make a kid feel the way that they did, in school type of thing. That was where, and I suppose it sort of taught me a huge lesson in regards to, you know, people can take away, you know, certain things that you say, which can live with them for the rest of their life. So, you know, sometimes the things that we say to a young person, it can mean a lot, even if that kid's been a bastard or whatever you want to call them. You know, it can affect these kids later on in life as well.
Yeah.
Hugely. I work with, I've worked with a variety of adults and children now, but, you know, adults, I still have adults that I work with who are massively affected by those comments that were made or experiences that happened at school. And there's this statistics that dyslexic children on average are told 20,000 times at school that they've got it wrong.
Wow.
20,000 times. Now, the thing is, what you start to hear is, I'm wrong, not I've spelt this wrong or I've got this wrong. And I think as a parent, you know, this is where I think really understanding that emotional and mental side of neurodiversity, because dyslexia isn't just reading, writing, and spelling, you know. ADD isn't just not being able to focus, you know. Autism isn't just about social skills. They're all much more complex. And being able to support your child in a different way and really understand what's going on for them, that is one of the most important things I would say to any parent out there with neurodiverse children. It's not about trying to get them to learn their times tables and learn to read. And it's actually really, you need to be okay with who they are, and then you can support them. Just like my son said, you know, it was my problem that his writing was the worst in the class, because I was still getting sucked into that comparison that we get sucked into at school. As soon as I let go of that comparison, I was just like, as long as you're okay, you know, I'm here to help. If you need help, ask me. As long as you're okay, then I'm good with that.
Well, I think the big thing is, and you've really sort of brought something to light here, is that, you know, I think some parents do get sucked in by what the outside world is sometimes saying.
Hugely.
Do you know what I mean? You know, I think with my parents, and my parents are great people, there was never a problem with them, but you know, through school, I think I look back at it now and I can definitely see how the school was heavily influencing them to, you know, be harder on me, you know, or, you know, things like that, which didn't help. It actually made the situation a lot worse because you know, I think in the end there, when you can continually keep failing, you're constantly getting yelled at as soon as you get your report card saying that you're not trying and all that type of stuff. As a young kid, you get to a point where you give up. You know, you think, because don't get me wrong, there was times when I even tried and still failed. You know, so it's like, well, if I'm trying and failing, what's the point in trying? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think that's the school system almost entirely disregards the emotional development of children. It's all about the academic development, and there's zero consideration for what that child is feeling.
Well, I think as well, I'm not sure if it's the same in NZ, but schools here in Australia, especially private schools, so I came from a private school, they're highly, you know, ranked on how many people are getting high grades when they leave the school and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't put up, like, say, for example, I remember going past a school here in Sydney, and it said, I remember a sign being out the front of the school, congratulations to the 10 whatever students who got the OP1 or whatever it was, whatever they call it now, I forget what they call it, grade at the end of the year type of thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like, all right, well, some of those kids are obviously really smart. And I've seen some OP1 kids since I've left school. And you know what? They're no further ahead than a lot of the other kids. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, there are some. But some of them have just, they haven't built businesses or, built some really great things. And then some have gone completely the other way. So this is the world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, you bring up a really good point there, is that, you're getting that pressure and stress from school. And then if you're getting it at home as well, then no wonder that our mental health and our sense of self is affected, because that is where we first learn, are we capable? Can we do this? And I think it's really interesting. We work with a lot of corporates and they want these creative, out of the box problem solvers. They want people with intuition and empathy. Well, those are your neurodiverse kids. And, no disrespect to if you did well at school or if you do well at school, that's great. But it's just our society values that more than you being a good person. And that's what I think as a neurodiverse parent and with neurodiverse kids, that's what you've really got to help instill, is that, I just used to talk to the boys and say, look, school is something you have to get through. Unfortunately, the teachers don't know as much about, being dyslexic as you or I do. They're trying their best, but, just as long as you know that whether you're successful or school or not, it doesn't need to define you. So as long as you try, and I mean, it sounds a bit wanky, but as long as you try your best, then I really am happy with that.
Yeah, I think a big thing is with school, I think we really do need to look at, a big thing that I'm always big on is like helping, especially young people who may not be doing that well in school, instead of naming them and shaming them or whatever like that, right, is let's have a look at some of those other strengths or skills that they're really good at. And really, let's try and help them find maybe a non-traditional career path. Then, because I think a big thing is like, especially when I was at school, it was like, all right, you've got to if you don't get good marks, you're never going to get a good job. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, that's actually incorrect. You may not get the marks you need, but there are actually other routes to get to whatever that is that you want to achieve, and I think this is where we really need to sit with young people or schools or whatever and say, hey, look, you're fantastic at being able to communicate. Have you thought about taking this direction to do this or whatever like that? Kev, you were the same. Like you even said with like your jobs and all of that type of stuff that, it took you a while to sort of get into what you're doing, and then you really found your passion. And, imagine if you could have found that a lot earlier.
Yeah. I mean, in school, there was all this, it was just so sporadic for me, my enjoyment of it, my grades, so I one semester I would walk in and get an A+ in legal studies and English, but fail music, and or I'd be in social studies and I'd find that particular topic of that particular assignment really interesting, and I'd walk in and get an A+, but it was just the teachers weren't they didn't even know to try it, because I'm probably giving teachers a bit of a bad rap here. Like they don't know a lot of the time, especially when I was a child, to what's happening and how to come to you on your level. But we've come back to this theme so many times on this podcast. I think it's a really serious problem, and not just for neurodiverse kids. School is not about identifying their strengths and helping to nurture them. It's about ticking a bunch of boxes.
Yeah, agreed. Honestly, we could talk for hours about the education system and
Well,
things
the funniest, you know what the funniest thing is, what I've learned about the education system, right? It's not a New Zealand thing. It's not an Australian thing. It's not an American thing. It's worldwide. Do you know what I mean? And this is where it's like, and it wasn't until I suppose social media came out and I was able to connect with a lot of other people similar to myself. And I was able to go, oh, you know, because like I said, I've said this prior on a lot of the other podcasts, is that when I was younger, I felt like I was the only person who was, you know, dyslexic, and I didn't even know I was ADHD at that point.
Well,
you know what I mean? And it's really funny because now I'm even getting people reaching out to me who are seeing the podcast and all the other work we're doing, who I went to school with, who are now going, oh, hey, Will, I'm ADHD, my son's this, and it's like, holy crap. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's really...
it's the that feeling of being alone. Well, like I had that framework because I just didn't understand that this was a thing that some people had. I thought, what's wrong with me? Especially with the autism side of things, because I had the ADHD, but then also the autism. So even if I could get myself into a social situation, which happened occasionally, I couldn't navigate it very well. But it was very lonely, to the point where even today, sometimes as an adult, when I meet someone and we connect and we have similar lived experiences, and I find someone who had the same experience as me, I get really emotional. Like I'm happy, but like I'll have a little cry, you know, like because it was a pretty lonely, traumatic period for me in school, you know.
Well, I think that was why I turned to drugs and alcohol. Do you know what I mean? Because it was sort of like medicine. Do you know what I mean? I was able to hide that. And a lot of the time when you go to parties and party and all that, people wouldn't see you for the person failing at school. They'd see you as the fun party animal.
Yeah, this guy knows how to party.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, man, he is cool. But in school, it felt like I wasn't that cool, or I couldn't be cool in school because, you know, everything was against me. But then when you're at a party, you got your booze and alcohol and drugs and all that. That was where you were able to showcase, you know, this cool person. But obviously over time, that's not a very healthy lifestyle to live.
Well, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I used to come across as very confident. Most people would have said I was quite confident, but I wasn't confident at all. It was a complete facade, really, because I was always waiting for my next mistake or my next thing that I fucked up, or, you know, because it was always going to come. So I always used to be the slightly crazy out there chick, because then when I made a mistake, I could be like, oh, see, I told you I was like the unreliable one or this one. So you end up almost self-perpetuating this persona to kind of make up for all of the stuff that you can't do, or that's certainly what I did.
Sort of a different kind of masking almost.
Well,
absolutely.
Do you know what's really interesting since I've gotten older, right? I have connected with a lot of people I used to go to school with and that. And in school, right, I didn't feel like I was confident. I felt, you know, really not confident at all. But it's been really interesting because I speak to people and I tell them, I'm like, man, I struggled in school. I had no confidence. And they're like, what, really? I just saw you as like this really cool, popular guy. And I'm thinking, what? You thought that of me? I honestly did not think about that in myself. Do you know what I mean? And it's just so, I suppose, sometimes hard to really... I suppose see that in yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How about we get positive for a second?
I think Vanessa's frozen on the screen there.
Oh, I believe
hello,
she
Vanessa, are you there?
Can you hear us? Oh, we might have lost her for a second.
Oh no. She's anyway, I'm sure she's probably gonna come back in a sec. So you know, we might just keep on talking while she makes her way back. I'll just see if she's in the guest spot. No, she's not there as of yet, but I'm sure we will get her back in a sec. But we will get there in a sec. But yeah, it was true. Like, this is what I mean, Kev. Like, hang on, I think she's coming back now. Let me just have a look. Let us know when. Okay, I think she's coming back, but we'll just keep checking there. But what was your experience like, Kev? Like,
I mean, there was some positive stuff. I've said I was speaking. Like I said, I was speaking at in a panel yesterday, and we were talking about tattoos. And they were sort of talking about what do they mean to you, and I was like, well, all my tattoos are musical, and the reason for that is when I was in school, once I discovered music, and it was like my special interest as an autistic person, so I spent a lot of time getting good at it, and people enjoyed watching me play and stuff. That was completely transformative for me. It got me back into social situations. I was never in them, so it got me into social situations. And people were like, "Oh, it does." People will be like, "Oh, this guy can talk about Smashing Pumpkins and nothing else for 3 hours, but that's fine. He's a musician." Like they didn't go, "Oh, this kid's weird." So there was some positive aspects to it as well. And I gotta, although I failed music miserably, I did have this music teacher who recognized that I had some talent, and I think she kind of took the and she was this great singer from Southern Mississippi, a blues singer who talked like that. And she recognized that there was something that needed to be nurtured in me from music, even though I was failing all of her classes. So that was nice.
Yeah, crazy. Vanessa, welcome back. Oh, good.
My ADHD son just did something to the internet. I was like,
good. Oh, we just kept on rolling with it. We've done
it's the day for it.
We've done so many podcasts now that we're just able to just roll with the punches. So Kev and I just kept on rolling with that. So what I might do, how has your work informed your parenting journey? What did you mean by that one there, Kev?
I guess, now that you're working in the field, I guess both in hindsight, but now you've never stopped being a mother. How has that work informed your relationship with your kids, the way that you parent, any advice you would give to people who are parenting as a neurodiverse person?
Yeah. It's a really good question. And I think we've already touched on it a little bit, is that it's that understanding and support that I can now give both my kids, but on a real equal level, so it's not, as I was saying, it's not just about reading, writing, spelling, focus, social skills. It's actually helping them see who they are as people and really help them develop their sense of themselves. Rather than just the diagnosis. We have a saying, support the person, not the diagnosis. And so what I would say, how my work has changed that is, obviously it gave me tools myself to be able to use, because what I know about any neurodiverse individual is that they are usually very empathetic and very sensitive to what people are feeling rather than what they're saying. And so, like I said, you've got to come to terms with it yourself so that you can be giving that really clear message. And my work now has given me tools that I can use. Like, I could never understand time. I mean, I just could never get the concept of time. I mean, I was always late. But now that I've done my own work, I've kind of got to terms with that, and it means I can actually help my boys in a more positive way. So, old Vanessa would have been like, "Oh my God, come on. Oh my God. I would have been getting so stressed. We're late. Hurry up. Oh my God, why aren't we organized? It would have been lots of tension. Whereas now I'm like, okay, so we do need to leave in 10 minutes and you need to go and do this now. I used to be the mum that would shout 10 instructions at my ADHD son. Well, that's never going to work. He's only ever going to do the first thing and then he'll just forget the rest because you'll get distracted.
Exactly.
So there is a different way of parenting for sure. But I think, if I had 2 tips for parents out there, one is patience. And that's patience with yourself as well as with your children. So, you're just patience. And it sounds so simple, but it isn't. It's hard to be patient as a parent when your child isn't doing what everybody else is doing, when when you're late, when they're disorganized. It's kind of hard to keep remembering that they're not doing it on purpose. They do process the world in a completely different way. And if something isn't working the first time you try it, then maybe try a different way, So you do have to be adaptable and you have to be patient. And I would say my work has kind of given me those skills and those tools, and just to understand how their visual mind works. Is probably 2 of the things, and I've realized I've said 2, so I wonder what the other one I was going to say.
It's all good. It's all good.
Do you find though, we were talking earlier about a potential sort of kinship in the family with multiple neurodiverse members? Is there a shorthand there? Is there like a really good line of communication? Maybe, all being neurodiverse, maybe it's not the best communication in the world, but there is that understanding.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is definitely.
Did they see it clearly in you?
Yeah, definitely. And I now openly own it.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's kind of where you need to be a bit vulnerable as a parent. I think sometimes as parents we get sucked into this. We've got to be perfect and we've got to know all the answers. Whereas I'm very open with my boys now, and we'll talk about the challenges. So like I said, when my son was looking for a car, I'm like, I'm not going to go into the detail, let's just find a nice picture and someone else will go and get a AA check or whatever done, because that's not my skill set. With my ADHD son, we joke about leaving things to the last minute, and I think it's good. It's good to have a little bit of humor, but you can only have the humor if you really are accepting of them and of yourself.
You can't have the humor without the respect.
Yeah.
I had to explain that to a few friends. I don't mind having a laugh at myself. I'm very forgetful and very clumsy. My executive function has a double whammy of autism and ADHD.
Yeah.
And I find it funny sometimes, but if they're also not attempting to be understanding in other ways, then they're just having a laugh at my autism, so there's a bit of a balance there.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So, we're getting close to the end here, so we'll get to the last couple of questions here. Now, what advice, what would your advice be for neurodiverse parents?
Now we can remember point 3 if we can.
Exactly. I've managed to find my notes now. So there's a few things. The first thing is really expand your awareness of neurodiversity. Dyslexia isn't just about reading, writing, and spelling. I've said this a couple of times. ADD, ADHD isn't just about focus. Autism isn't just about social skills. It's understanding that the impact that neurodiversity has on the whole person. Don't just look at the learning or that one skill, So I really would encourage parents to talk to other parents. Like you said, Will, when you found others who were going through the same as you, it's really great. And I think so often as parents, we get so ashamed is probably the right word, when our child isn't doing what everyone else can do, that it tends to get a bit lonely. So find out as much as you can about neurodiversity and just broaden your understanding of it. My second piece of advice would be relax, 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 and then relax. School may not be the place where your child is going to shine, but they will find their way if you can support them in the right way, they will find their way. And just relax. It's so hard not to get caught up on I remember when, on the competition and comparison. And, I remember hearing somewhere that comparison is a thief of joy. And that's true internally. But when you are then comparing your child to someone else, it really sucks the joy out of being a parent. And I would just say, don't go down that road. I used to stand in the playground and used to have these awful spelling books for our kids. And there was growing green and tickled pink. And my son had green, 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 one pink, green, 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 one pink, week after week after week. And all the other mums were like, their books were full of pink. And it's like, now I look back and think, if I'd known he was dyslexic and understood what that meant, then it wouldn't have bothered me. So the awareness is key, and try to relax about their school journey. Find them the right support, and they will be okay. But they're going to be okay if you can support them at home as well. And I don't mean teach them to read and write. I mean connect with them and with what's really going on, and talk to them about the other skills that they've got. That was huge. It just took the pressure off. That's what you need to do. You need to take the pressure off home.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think sometimes you're getting so much pressure at school where your home is where you're supposed to relax. And if you're getting that at home as well, it can actually play a big role on your mental health, especially for a young person, things like that. That's why I'm really not keen on giving kids homework. You know what I mean? I'm very big on, once they've done school for the day, let them go home and be kids.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving them something to go home and think about. We just say, go and think about that, but don't give them homework. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they will go away and think about it. About
but I think as a parent, you get sucked into this, oh my god, I've got to do homework. So your relationship with your child becomes about trying to get them to do homework that they don't want to do and maybe can't do, whereas it would be so much better to give them something to think about, and you sit down and have a quarter of an hour conversation about it, or like that would be so much more valuable. And I think so many parents, if your child has been diagnosed, then maybe just start having a look at some of your own behaviors or your school journey, because, it is hereditary. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And, and I think it can be a little bit confronting. Some parents don't want to face that. So you've got to be brave as well.
Yeah.
Totally. Awesome. Well, Kev, can you think of anything else you want to ask before we wrap everything up, my man?
I just think maybe if we could just sort of figure out how people can connect with your work, and
sure,
who might want to connect with your work and how they could benefit.
Yeah. So where's the best places to find you? How do you work? How does it all work? Where can people find you?
Now that I've got a wonderful neurotypical business partner, things are a lot more organized. That's what I would say. So we are on socials. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. And you can also find us on the website, which is www.remarkableminds.org. So if you want to know more about the Davis methods, we can share those, but we also do online coaching, and we also provide parenting support, but we also kind of provide more that mental and emotional support as well, because we're really passionate about just helping people thrive, whether that be the parents of neurodiverse individuals or the neurodiverse individuals themselves. And I'm sure I was probably supposed to tell you something else, but anyway, I think that's probably it. Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn, and our website.
It's all good. It'll come to you probably about half an hour after you get off this this thing. It always is the case, you know. But look, thank you so much for coming on today, Vanessa. It's been so good to sit down and finally speak with you. I apologize that I'm doing this off my phone. My laptop and that has all just died here, but, you know, we've made it happen. That's the main thing. As long as I sound okay, that's what I'm a bit worried about. You know what? I'll probably hear it back and be like, man, that sounds better than when we normally have it all set up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, and honestly, guys, I really love your work, and it's been so great to speak to both of you. And thank you so much. You know, I love these conversations when they're real, you know, and it certainly was real because my internet dropped out halfway through.
Totally.
I was worried I might join you because my battery's nearly dead. But
yeah, crazy. Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Kev. So we don't normally talk about this, but because we're on my phone, I'm not going to be able to hear when the music is finished. Are you able to give me a thumbs up and I can press end? Then
I'll do the director thing. I'll count down.
Even if you just put the thumbs up, that's easier for me, man. And then I can just press end. You know what I mean? So thank you so much for everyone who's been listening today. Like I said, please follow us on our social media platform. Please check us out and subscribe to our emailing list at theopenheartedsociety.com. My name's Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Photon John, and this is the Open Hearted Podcast. Till next time.